Hello and welcome to another episode of Digi-Tools in Accrual World, brought to you by the Digital Disruptors. My name is Indi and I'm joined by
Ryan, but no John this week.
No John. He might pop up. We never know. He's a bit like the whack-a-mole, he turns up and you just bash him back down. But joking apart, today's episode, we are excited to bring you some content in the form of upcoming app news, as well as hearing from a couple of our series sponsors. And who are they, Ryan? Tell us more.
So the show this week is sponsored by Tugger. We've had them on before, and they are a dashboard reporting tool powered by Power BI, and brings in multiple different data sets from either financial or non-financial information across multiple platforms. But the series sponsors this week are iplicit and Snare. Now, iplicit, mid-tier finance solution, one of the UK market leading, if they're not the fastest UK mid-tier finance systems out there. And then Snare, which is probably the system you need to be aware of if you're thinking about making tax digital. It's all about getting information as quickly as possible from your clients. We're talking a little bit about that later on.
Nice. And aside from that, we have got our upcoming awards, which should be shortly after the release of this episode. So once again, if you're not already at Accountex North, then think about joining us for the evening. We are the evening before Accountex North, and we've got an evening's worth of entertainment, as well as celebrating some of the wow, what would you say? I was going to say some lesser known people in our space, but looking through some of the shortlists this year, quite well known, but probably under recognized in some ways, like the value of each of the contributions and the things that have been done. So it's really great to see our little award show at least celebrating the independently celebrating some of the firms and the vendors and the individuals that have been nominated by people in the industry.
Yeah, it's super exciting. If you can't make it, which we'd love to see you, but if you can't make it, we will be live streaming it. And that's the beauty. We had over 2,000 people watch it live last year, as well as the live podcast. And we do try and make it entertaining. It's not just a bland awards event. There's no black tie. It's pretty much dress to impress, have a bit of fun, and recognise the brilliant people that make a big difference in our industry.
Yep. And I'm really looking forward to that this year. Been saving up my drinks tokens just for that one evening, because obviously I am not really drinking at the moment. So it will be, at least allows me at the moment, I think, 3 drinks of the evening. 3. And
wow.
Yeah, it'll be fun to get on stage again.
So I'm joined once again by Paul Sparks from iplicit. So Paul, month end it's always a bit of a mystery or a bit of a challenge for people who are working in business. It's an area where I think probably automation hasn't really had a huge focus, but seems to be uber topical now. So tell me more about what you guys are doing at iplicit to help with that month-end bottleneck challenge.
Well, I could probably give you 2 answers here, John. I could pretend that it's all new and we've got something that's going to change everybody's life. Or I could actually just tell you, which I will do, which is the reality, which is that when we first designed iplicit and launched it in 2019, we had this concept, albeit it was limited, of the automation center. And little did I know that it would end up in 2025 being the topic that everybody's and rebranded in a different way. So
you're the man to watch for the future, right? Is that what you're saying?
On this occasion, maybe, luckily, but yeah, so we always had this concept of automation because we understood that our goal, the number one reason why somebody would want to invest in this new system is how can they improve the productivity of their people and give a better outcome and get better insights to make better decisions for their organization. So the more we could save people's time by performing tasks that are repetitive, then clearly that's a good outcome. At the heart of the system, one of the areas that people have always wanted to be able to do is to use our automation center. So a great example of how that can help a finance team is accruals. So the ability to define how you want to manage accruals, not just one fixed process that's a button inside the software, but a configurable process that allows you to decide which types of items you'd want to accrue for and how that would work. And then to say that I want to always on the second working day of a new month to better run my accruals prior to do my work, wherever you want to do that. So that would be a great example. And another one that we're helping a lot of fintechs with is all about RevRec and about helping them be able to do work around how they do their revenue recognition, so they can build billing schedules and be from those billing schedules be able to work out how that's going to work and how they recognize that revenue automatically. Now, this was some of our customers who are moving from older products or more entry-level products. They have people who spend days doing this work every single month. Days.
Yeah.
And when we show them and say, well, you can just schedule this, that this just happens on the first of the month automatically. It's like, no, seriously. Just choose what's the distribution. Is it a 12-month contract split, or is it a quarter? Well, however it works, they can set that up and automatically it will do the automated calculations and adjustments without any human being involved.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
We have over our history added more of these automations, or should we call them agents, just to be fashionable, that will go off and actually process these tasks, albeit within the guide rails that have been set out.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll put my accountant's hat on now temporarily and just say, things like revenue recognition, highly topical, given that we've got obviously FRS 102 changes coming in. And revenue recognition will be a high priority issue for a lot of organizations to consider and manage more effectively in their organizations. So yeah, you guys have knocked that out of the park for those businesses concerned about that kind of thing. Let's just move the conversation on a little bit and talk about your data. Now, this is going to get a little bit techie, maybe a little bit nerdy, but I guess in the traditional sense, when you've got an accounting product, we're probably familiar that there's some kind of database in the background. It's probably based in SQL if you're up with the modern parlance and things like that, and that data is stored in a particular way. But you were saying, Paul, that you're moving to making more use of data lakes to kind of help to aggregate more and more of this data and make it more useful and present that back into the product. So can you just explain that a little bit? Try and keep it as simple as possible, not just for me, but for everyone else, but also explain why that makes a big difference to you guys as an organization.
Yeah, so it comes back to one of the top reasons why anybody would change their finance system is to get better information to make better decisions, as I previously said. So the big challenge, however, for years, and we talked about on a previous session, John, is that often people need to have a PhD in astrophysics in order to get their data out in a meaningful format in an easy way. So I think that's always been, the holy grail. How can we make that task easier? And I've worked in this space for 30 years. And I remember in previous organizations, we'd produce a new reporting tool and people would say, oh, it's a lot easier to use. I really like it. Oh, but it's not powerful enough. And then you produce a powerful bit. Well, it's really powerful, but it's not very easy to use, is it? There's always been this middle ground. And, as we talked about previously, that's why in the world of iplicit, we created our Excel add-ins, because that at least was something that people could harness. But I feel that where this goes to, and the reason why we're doing this work, which uses effectively, it's called ETL. So it extracts, transforms, and layers. And there are different configurations. There's star, there's snowflake. These are basically different ways to organize your data so that it's quick and easy to find the relevant information, and it's organized without having to do things called joins and all sorts of things of that nature that's in the world of SQL.
Yeah.
So our data lake supports and underpins the all-new iplicit analytics feature that our customers will get very soon, which will enable people to then just be able to very quickly build their own reports, dashboards, views, schedule reports, but importantly layer on top of that using to standard normal language inquire, show me all of my purchase invoices that are outside of my average normal payment terms.
Yeah, nice. And I guess going forward into the future, then, once you've kind of got this change of infrastructure, you're going to be able to do so much more with it. And you already said, that you demonstrated the fact that it's creating new products for iplicit. But where does this take you? I mean, what can we get to a point of doing, in terms of, what are the limits of expansion? And I guess also, because I know you're going to talk about this with Ryan and integrations potentially, does that expand the ability to integrate more broadly and more deeply with some other products in the future as well, potentially?
It definitely is a key enabler for us to harness the power of AI.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a data lake with meaningful data that's easy to understand, that's everything that an AI model needs in order to be able to make and translate and make decisions and get data quickly. If it has to try and understand a very complicated traditional database, which is in not necessarily coded for presentation, it's coded for efficiency of storing information, that makes it a lot harder task for AI.
Yeah, and aside from the AI, angle, is there anything else that this will help users of iplicit to do? I mean, we talked a little bit about reporting. I know we talked about budgeting in the previous one, but does this also add to the elements of automation that you can add to this product?
Yeah, it does. It makes it much easier for us to build newer agents that will perform more tasks and more for people to integrate through, without any shadow of a doubt. I think the big factor actually, and one of the advantages of the work that we have done, is pretty not visible for our customers, but it's important to us. It's about long-term security. So clearly people are adding more and more data to our systems all the time. And one of the trends with iplicit, when we launched the product, it had a very strong public API. And that's been something that we've noticed over the period of time since our launch, is that we have a really strong following with people who want strong integration, and they want to be able to use those APIs to have a product that's closely knit to other key systems in their ecosystem. Yeah. And importantly, this helps them to be able to get more information available and share it into those other systems as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a fundamental part of just operating in the technology space now, particularly from an accounting point of view, is number one, people want really high security because this is often very highly confidential information, but also they want access to that data as easily and as seamlessly as possible so they can blend it with other products.
Absolutely.
Well, there we go, Paul. That was great to catch up with you again, and it's really interesting to sort of hear more about the automations that you can bring into the product, and of course where you're investing more broadly to sort of allow us to do more and more, as we sort of flip into this crazy world of AI and everything else that's coming on. Just great to catch up with you. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so I am kicking off this week's app news, and it's a big one from Xerocon, which was held last week now. I mean, obviously in real terms, this is a couple of weeks later. So for those that haven't already caught some of the new features and updates that were announced over at Xerocon in Brisbane, the new AI financial Superagent has been unleashed upon the world. I suppose not actually the world at the moment. So it's the evolution of Jax. So I would like to just say it's Jax 2.0, but obviously, maybe that's a little bit too millennial of me to say. So starting in September and progressing over the coming months, you'll be able to use Jax to get access to financial data and do that in real time. So you can access instant cash flow, P&L, balance sheet data, use it to make more strategic decisions to support the actionable insights that you might have with a client. So things like ideas on how to improve cash flow or comparing loan interest rates across banks. Super clever. And you'll also get a clearer view of the finances. And obviously this is going to be rolled out primarily in the Australian and New Zealand and US markets to begin with, because that's where a lot of the the kind of, I guess, the heartland has been in terms of training it. But I think we're expecting some of this to come very quickly down the track. The one interesting thing to note on this is that it's really meant a deeper relationship with OpenAI for Xero this time, in terms of how they're using the agent to actually train it and to have better engagement with it. It is very interesting to see that, because obviously OpenAI has bridged some of its own search queries and gaps through using Google's API. So I was quite surprised that actually they didn't turn around and choose any of the other ones, like Vertex, Gemini based, or Claude. So yeah, this was a big commitment on that front. And then the other thing was, there's a new homepage that they're rolling out. There's going to be there's been a lot of testing behind that as well. So it looks like it's been redesigned to be a bit more user-friendly. There's some changes on payments as well, that they were focusing on how to make that a little bit better. So there were some changes on progress payments and being able to track the progress of your payments. So if you have different types of users that are milestone-based payments, such as like freelancers or like website designers, where you need to release a particular milestone before a payment can be made, then they're updating that as well. There's some more sophistication around the invoices, so that you can make them look a little bit more customized and a bit more friendly. And there was also the partner hub and work papers solution. So there was some more, they listened to the fact that you don't want to keep jumping between different interfaces, and instead have something that allows you to run things from one hub, and therefore you're not jumping in and out of tasks and then getting distracted with something else between the different dashboards, and the way that user Xero practice management can be used. So that to say, there were some big releases that were made, and they were really talking about how to make it a more sophisticated workflow and controlled stream of information. I think there'll be some things that we need to keep an eye out as well, in terms of like how Jax will continue to iterate and roll out. So that, in line with what we're expecting to see, is for accountants, for bookkeepers, beyond that as well. And it's one for us to play with, I guess. So Ryan, anything to add on that? And what are your thoughts on this latest Xerocon?
Yeah, I mean, I need to still dive into the details of it, but from what you're saying, it's going to still be Jax 2.0, as I guess you're referring to, is going to still be about looking at data and providing insights. So asking it questions, it giving information, rather than it being used to process transactions or automate other mechanics. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not going to, there's no automation as such that they're talking about, but more that you can converse with it, you get a clearer view of things. So it's more just in the what would we say, it's determining some of the queries that you have, and there's maybe something that is slightly more probabilistic about it in terms of what they say. In certain countries, you'll be able to see, in Australia and the US, maybe things like comparing loan interest rates. So that will at least provide you something, but maybe it's not going to then make a recommendation or continue to then say, well, I'll take the next step on that, because I guess right now they want to first see what happens with that. There's a journey that they need to undertake by saying, okay, what happens when we allow people to use this function, and which way do they want to play with it, rather than just going the whole hog and building out the agent even more so. But again, it's hard to know, because we're not going to see it in the UK, I guess, straight away.
Which is frustrating, to be fair. So there was lots of other things you mentioned as well, which were positive for the UK. So the invoicing, the
Reimagining
dashboard,
homepage, dashboard.
Yeah. Well, those I've seen, and that looks good and feels good. But the AI side, I'm disappointed with. So they released Jax, and let's be honest, it did not go down well, and lots of people were kind of put off from using it. And then there was kind of this thing of, oh, something new's coming, but they've got to, with that, bring something that it's not like people are going to jump on it because they're excited. They've been put off from what's already come out, so they need to win back hearts and minds. And from what I guess they've summarized here, it doesn't sound like it's doing anything fundamentally different from what was originally advertised that it was going to do and didn't do. So the bit that I'm also slightly disappointed with, although I'm sure it would evolve, is that their main competitors are looking at AI to change the way accounting is done. So it's all about automating as much as possible, bringing information to your fingertips as part of a process, rather than just asking questions to get information back. Whereas Xero's kind of doing that at the back end. So all the data's in there. We want to now look at the back end. Now, I'm pretty sure I saw something somewhere about Xero now going to the point of automating bank reconciliation completely.
Yep.
So that's great, right? So now it's going to do something and it's going to put forward like a risk assessment we can go and review. That I think is great. That's something that they talked about like 5-6 years ago, maybe longer than that, but the technology just wasn't quite there to do it. That's a great step. Really excited on that. The rest of it, I wish, I want them to have bigger objectives. Sage, eradicating period close. That's a big objective. I want to feel something from Xero, which is this is where we're heading. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah, they do mention some of this, by the way, not to confuse them, but they do mention that it should help you automate some tasks or make them easier or smoother or faster. Actually, they don't actually say that it will. It makes it smoother and faster to generate insights, create quotes and invoices, and intelligently draft invoice emails.
I mean, it's kind of Xero does well with that stuff already, from what I've seen.
There's, like I said, there'll be some things that maybe you can. Look, we're speculating on this. I'll tell you, I agree with you that from some of the other AIs that we saw and the way they are using an agent to perform a task, no, I can't see that yet. But they are doing a lot more work with Sift Analytics. And that was something that, it's the first step, I think, the actionable insights from Sift Analytics and the enhancements being made there. So the fact that you'll be able to more quickly understand the financial health, the business performance, the monitoring of key metrics, perhaps that's the underlying basis for a successful agent, is that you have as much of that data available to then train and see what happens when you make more of this information available or what tasks you will perform next. So that is part of maybe the automation journey, is learning that a little bit more. And that's not to say they don't already have that, but I think that's where I would start. They've got to make more of a dent in this. It's substantially different from some of the other players in our space, like QuickBooks, for instance. And it seems like they're taking much more of a true financial perspective in terms of like the way that they're working with payments, the way they're working on the financial health, the way they're working on data analytics. But maybe I'm speaking too soon and bigging them up so much, but that to say, like, that's what I took away from it. It was positive, but you're right, still a little bit slow.
Hey, I'm here to be the pessimist. I normally am on this show. I will critique things, and if I'm disappointed, I will say so. But I wasn't there. I wasn't at Xerocon. I haven't got the hype. Maybe what we'll try and do is get someone that was there, that's UK based, to come on our live show every Thursday and talk about it. Maybe we'll do that next.
Do I detect a little hint of Johnny Gaunt coming up?
Nope. Maybe, but we'll see. I wouldn't say no, just in case he's listening and his ears pricked up. But look, as well as what Xero have been doing with the big announcement, they're also consistently focusing on those 3 pillars that they wanted to do. One of them being payroll, and they've been talking about what they've been doing with payroll. So there's not really been anything dramatically that's changed in payroll in the UK payroll, at least over the last 5-10 years. But what we are seeing is they've refocused, and they're doing things that make things a little easier for people. So they've automated a lot of the onboarding. They've put more into the employee's hands, so you're not having to do everything as a processor. That's been relatively recent. But they're also talking about what's coming down the line. One, obviously, they reference JAX and the automation that will be able to bring, removing a lot of manual repetitive tasks. without stating what any of those are. But they're also going to bring in complex rosters and advanced time and scheduling tools. I'm assuming taking some functionality, if not all of the functionality of Planday, into the core payroll product, which is something they definitely should do. They kind of lose some operational areas to competitors in this space because the payroll is quite simple. Works really well for the really small businesses, but not so well for the ones that are a bit larger. I said about employee self-onboarding, but they're also, as you referenced, going to focus a lot on reporting as well, bring out smarter insights on how people have, I guess, how you've engaged with your staff. How's their holiday fluctuating? If you're looking at the scheduling side, when do they prefer to work over other time? So yeah, it's something that they're going to be focusing on, and hopefully, because I want to see more in this space. Hopefully, this is something we're going to see over the next, 6 to 12 months. They don't give a time frame, but this is something I would expect for them to focus on, especially as we get around to the new payroll year in April next year.
And in other news, I wanted to talk to you about Dext for a moment and their line item extraction. So just so you know, this has happened. You are now able to automatically use single line item extraction. Don't take the piss out of me on this one, Ryan. This is very important, okay? Your subscription includes a certain amount of line item extraction credits. And okay, so it's not the most exciting thing for as a news story goes. I agree. But it is clever, and it is really quite good for us to then at least streamline some more of how that data needs to come out. Good for procurement and spend analytics, good for inventory. There's a lot of things that we can do to improve the budgeting on it. And so I thought it was a nice little story. There was not much more to say other than I think this is an important thing to say. So I've used my voice to really elevate this feature that Dext has released, and you can extract it from the following types of cost documents: invoices, receipts, credit notes, and delivery notes, but you can't do it from statement and remittance advices or sales invoices just yet. But I think that's coming as well.
I quite like this one. I think actually this is a big leap forward in the way they've got the back engine working in Dext. So traditionally, it all used to be about just repetitive OCR templates. So you put an invoice in, it recognizes it's done it before, know how to extract it, repeat. They've now flipped that, and it's all AI powered. So it can look at the context that's inside the script. So whatever the descriptions are, similar to what Briefcase does, similar to what Genesis does, and then populate what you need for your description. And I guess if you want, multiple line item extraction in one go. Now, essentially, it's the thing of like clicking a button to make it work. They're going to build out the functionality and make it more streamlined over time. But it's something that they have done to see what the competitors are doing and recreate, I guess, how they do the fundamental part of their mechanics.
Their product. The funny thing is, it's not a competitor that's doing it. It was the fact that whole new businesses were built on this function here, and they've just said, oh, okay, we see you coming to try and eat our breakfast. Let us just close down the canteen, shall we? So that's sort of what I saw it as. And also the fact that you can group it. I agree with you. It's a nifty little one. So quite surprised they came out with it. It's a little bit of a power move, I thought, by Dext.
Yes, I would say so. And I think this just goes back to, and we're not sponsored by Dext. Right? We've got no need to say any of this.
Literally, if anyone is not sponsored by Dext, it is this podcast.
Yes, we have definitely pissed them off in the past. Assuming I can say that on a podcast. But I am so impressed with how, I guess, over the last year they've pivoted and brought out so many changes that really advanced the system. And this is another critical one. I'm a massive fan of what they've been doing over the last year. I mean, like, I guess, some others in the space, they stalled for a period, milking that cash cow. But now they've kind of just taken a leap forward. And then where the product is now compared to where it was a year and a half, 2 years ago is completely different.
A year ago. I'd say a year ago. We're giving the Dext, Big D, some love today. So well done, Dext. We're loving it. We've seen a bit of a transition. I was a bit worried for you with Iris there, but This is looking good.
No, sure. And I do love a big D, look, on the
Yeah.
wall. So yeah,
Lots of big D.
all,
Said it here first.
all love about the big
Uh,
D.
okay.
So moving on, I guess, we've talked about it a lot, and we've kind of referenced it already by talking about Xero and their big announcement over in Australia. But Intuit are constantly talking about what they're doing with AI. But that's not all that they're doing. They're still releasing new features. And something I picked up, which I thought was pretty cool, was their pay by bank feature, which is the ability to, I guess, in the same way that you've got functionality out in some of their competitors, that you've got an embedded piece of software inside the system, which now allows you to send out invoices and have your customers pay directly by bank. So this is something that I think Xero's had for a while. I don't know if Superagent and Sage have the same functionality, but QuickBooks have now brought this out. Fully integrated, works on any device, faster settlement times, essentially instant because it's using kind of the open banking payment rails. And it does seem to have some fees set up though, so it'd be interesting to know how they're charging for that. But yeah, main thing is that they've enabled greater functionality in payments. As ever in any of their releases, they talk all about their AI agents, what it's doing. But another big release is that they are now able to sync PayPal data in. Around 20,000 UK businesses use PayPal. So this has got a big market that they're tapping into. And as ever with QuickBooks, is a direct integration. They're not using a partner here. They're doing this themselves, and they can pull in all of the PayPal data directly inside the system. Which is, makes it very powerful, especially if you're selling on PayPal.
Interesting. And you're not over, are you? Because there's a bit more Intuit news this week. And I've got some questions. I've got some questions.
Good. Well, I get two things really. So firstly, they have released a lot of CIS functionality. So I've always loved the CIS automation you can get in Xero, ability to verify subcontractors, ability to bulk send statements, and have reminders directly inside the system. That's now fully all available inside the Intuit platform. We were talking about this recently. This is something that Superagent have been advancing on as well. They've not quite got the verification of subcontractors, but the rest of the functionality is pretty much built in now. But also the enterprise, I'll try that again, the Intuit Enterprise Suite, which is, I guess, the top tier of anything that is QuickBooks. You've got QuickBooks Online, of which there are multiple tiers. Then you've got QuickBooks Online Advanced. And now, right above that, top level, Intuit Enterprise Suite, they brought out functionality to have a shared chart of accounts across all of your entities. Essentially, this subscription level is for your very large businesses, multi-entities, reconciling across and having a standardized chart of accounts. It's kind of expected for anything that's in that mid-tier space. And they have a functionality that allows you to manage that, turn on, off, and share across all of your entities inside one area, which I'm not sure if it's a game changer for them, but definitely helps to minimize others looking at their competitors.
So do you think that's something that they would ever consider rolling out to any of the other versions, the lower tiers of Intuit QuickBooks, especially because there's some of the functionality around intercompany transactions and streamlining that and automating this sort of exceptions and eliminations, etc. So what do you think, Ryan? Is that something that will always just stay in enterprise level?
It's hard to say, isn't it? That's why I missed it out earlier. So I can imagine that this would be something in QuickBooks Online Advanced because it's for those bigger organizations. I doubt it will come down to the smaller plans, and the reason for that is it will be a bit of a differentiator. So as you're migrating up, if you need that functionality, you just get the bigger package, because the way Intuit and QuickBooks Online works is you're not changing system. You're literally just kind of moving your data set up into greater functionality. So rather than having to migrate from a small business finance system to a mid-tier, all you do is you just switch on. We've now got the new package. We get great functionality. It makes sense therefore to have that standardization in that higher level. So I wouldn't expect it to come down, though that really depends on what their competitors do. Obviously, if the likes of Xero, Sage, Superagent all bring this in, Intuit are obviously going to bring that into the lower tier packages as well.
Nice. Okay, well, I'm going to end on something that actually second mention on the podcast today for Johnny Gaunt. Socket is now listed in Zapier. So they've added some more triggers and some zaps that you can use if you are a Socket user. In terms of being able to trigger when a proposal becomes active, when a change is requested, when a proposal a new proposal is created, or when it's in review, etc., etc. I mean, the things that you can do, and it's a number of things that you can do that just improve the automation overall. So very clever, and I think I thought it was a nice little ad for them. They're doing really well, and they have been shortlisted for one of our awards as well. For which one is it, Ryan? Remind me. Release of the year, I think.
Yes, I believe it is. I'm trying, because it's not a newcomer. So yeah, it would be release of the year. They're up against some good competition, so we'll see how they do. And even though Mr. Gaunt is on our judging panel, he was excluded from being involved in that because of obviously the conflict of interest. So it's all to do with who was nominated, and then the judges, the independent judges, would vote on.
Very nice. And that wraps up About News this week.
So today we're lucky enough to be joined by James Rose, the co-founder of Content Snare. We're going to dive a little bit into making tax digital. It's one of the main topics at the moment. You've got AI and then you've got making tax digital in the UK. And we've talked about AI endlessly. So let's touch a little bit on making tax digital. And James, I know obviously you've got an Australian background, but I assume you've heard about MTD. So what's your knowledge and understanding of what the heck this is and how it's going to impact the accounting industry?
I heard that accountants in the UK are just really excited and pumped for these new rules that are going to...
Pretty much.
I think just like anytime new rules come in on the accounting profession, they are just adding work, I mean, there's obviously reasons behind, the government has always got reasons, but it's always almost just more work for accountants. And I know, just 4 times a year, adding up extra load on accountants to get information from clients.
Yeah, and we've been I talked recently to with Chris Downing from Sage, and the fact that we're accountants, we're used to the periodic review, right? We go in and we look at a close date, we review everything, and then it's done until the next close date. And for compliance, we've been very happy with just doing that on an annual basis. But now we have to change that to do it 4 times a year. And I think a lot of the context from the government is, well, you just need to make sure your figures are reasonably correct. But actually, we like being accurate. We need to make sure our clients are happy with the figures that are going to be reported. So switching from once to 4 times a year amplifies everything. And one of the biggest pain points that I guess I experience is always that client communication side. I'm just trying to gather data. So I guess with you and what you do, I assume that's a big thing that you've been aware of and trying to resolve over in Australia. And obviously it's very applicable now to what's happening with MTD. So tell us a little bit about why does Content Snare exist? What are you resolving with that?
Well, I'll do a really quick summary. We didn't even start in the accounting profession. It's called Content Snare because it was originally for getting website content from clients. And about 2021, we found a bunch of accountants using the platform. We were like, what are you doing with this? And when we realized how big of a problem getting information was for the accounting profession and bookkeeping, we sort of hard pivoted into this industry. So that's why it exists. Like, we just noticed that issue in our own web design agency. And then it turns out basically every profession has the same issue. Accounting is uniquely problematic because there's just so much information you need all the time, right? And we have similar cadence for BAS period. That's a company level thing here in Australia, but 4 times a year, as well as the annual compliance, as well as fringe benefits tax in May, and there's accountants and bookkeepers are just there's a lot of information required throughout the year.
Yeah, and it's in many different places, right? And there's bits where, because it's complex, there's times where what's provided isn't actually what we've been asked for or what's expected, and we have to go back and forth. So how does I guess, Content Snare help resolve that problem?
Yeah, so that's classic, right? Like we ask for a thing and you don't get that thing. You get some last year's bank statement instead of this year's or whatever, like the classic problem. There's two parts to that, right? Is making sure it's really clear what you need. And Content Snare does that with like instructions before any question you're asking, whether that's like to type something in, like an answer to a question or upload a document. It's more of an interactive thing, right? It's like, we're describing what we need. We can put a video in there. We can put images, whatever, to really lay it out. And whether you're using Content Snare or not, that's kind of required. You need to make sure it's really clear what they need to do. Like if you're asking for someone's name, it's got to be like your full name, including any middle names. Like it sounds silly, but you really have to spell things out to that level, or you're not going to get it. People aren't going to get it right the first time. And the second bit is when they upload the wrong thing. We just provide a little function for people to hit the reject button and say, hey, like that's last year's tax return. Can you just maybe give us this one this year? That's a really common workflow as well. It's just, we call it rejecting, but like they don't see that terminology because that's a bit harsh. But yeah, it's just pushing back and saying, hey, we need something different. And just making that easy instead of doing it in another email that just adds onto a thread where you've got old info and new info just building up in this long thread. It's just all in one spot.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I think the thing I guess I'm concerned about for accountants in this space is that, one, how they're exchanging information, make sure it's in the right place, but how we're not creating an additional burden on the clients and making it feel more painful for them. So is part of the design of, I guess, how you're doing this document exchange is to make that as slick and as easy for the end user?
Yeah, and I had lunch with an accountant yesterday, and I said this, I'm like, what people see in Content Snare is this like, fairly stripped back interface, because what a client sees, it has to be so basic. We always say, like, imagine your most difficult client and pretend you're asking them questions. And we take that same, because then everyone else will get it if you think about your most difficult client. But we take that approach with building the interface to Content Snare. And to make things simple, it's incredibly complex on the background and on the back end. But this accountant I was speaking to, he likened it to accounting, where the client just sees their tax return or their lodgement or whatever, and all the stuff that's gone into like making that happen. They don't know or care or whatever. But it's kind of similar with Content Snare. Like our entire existence is to make things easy for the accountant's client. Because if that, we don't exist if it's not an easy process, right? There are so many client portals and stuff that, usually someone's coming from a portal and they're like, our clients won't use this. We've heard good things about Content Snare. And I mean, that is literally the reason we exist, is because we spend more time than anyone making it just stupid easy for the clients.
Yeah, and something that I've experienced in many accounting firms is that the portal is always something the accountant has to do, mostly for security, but also to make their life a bit easier. And then you start off going, okay, well, I've got a portal for accounts, I've got a portal for tax, I've got a portal for corporation tax. And the client's like, what the heck am I needing to interact with at any given point? So the other alternative is they try and make a single portal that covers everything. And then usually the user experience is so cumbersome that actually they just don't want to interact with it at all. So I guess if we're going back to what is needed for making tax digital and how does Content Snare help, what is probably the biggest win that any accounting firm owner or employee would benefit from? The thing that they would be like, oh, this is really making a difference from bringing Content Snare into their practice.
So it's normally just the turnaround time in client info, right? And especially because you're doing this 4 times a year, and it's usually fairly low margin work from the conversations I've had. There's not, all this extra time available and resources available with the extra burden of chasing clients 4 times a year. So it's really like, having that checklist ready to go and being able to bulk send that to all your clients, like sending, 500 of these requests out at once, this checklist, and to an extent sitting back and waiting for it to come in. Obviously not all clients will be that good, but we find that the stat we hear from most accountants is about 50% reduction in the number of clients they're waiting on for stuff. So you can generally, you're going to get like 50% of them, you're going to have the information back really fast. The other 50% will send automatic reminders and whatever. Sometimes they'll upload the wrong thing. And then like there is a manual process in, like, because you have to look at the thing and make sure it's correct and reject it if not. But it's when you can get bulk send these checklists to lots and lots of clients at once and get most of that data come back, that's the big win.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And whenever I've seen it at the moment, like on LinkedIn, when someone goes, we're going into MTD, we know there's going to be a pain point. It appears everyone just replies with, have you checked out Content Snare? So obviously there's an awareness in the UK of the platform and the fact it can be a big win for it. So are you finding that actually you're getting interest more through word of mouth than marketing from like the UK market?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously, Tom Johnson, he's been fairly pivotal, and I think because he's so well connected there, I think a lot of the UK, we had a bunch of UK customers already before he came on board, but then he's kind of just amplified that. He knows the right people to talk to, and he's been involved in that space for a long time, I think. But yeah, like I wouldn't say we've done a lot of direct marketing in the UK until the last few months, where we've done things like XUMag, like webinars to XUMag, and obviously other accounting, I don't know what you call them, publications, but it's relatively new. Yeah, I haven't sponsored any of the events over there. I mean, we did commit to Digital Accountancy Show next year, but that's not till October, so it's quite a while.
Same, I'm there as well.
Nice.
But no, look, I think the main thing is that I'm seeing that, yes, this is a known pain point. Yes, this is something that when I've looked at it, just like you said, is normally it's a mundane, horrible task people don't want to be doing. And anything that reduces that, as long as it's not going to blow the budget, is a big win for accountants. So it feels like if any accountant is going to this Making Tax Digital window, they've got their compliance software sorted. The next thing, in my opinion, they should be looking at is how do we make the journey, the interaction, as easy as possible. And it sounds like Content Snare is probably a good one to check out in that case.
I hope so. I believe it is, and clearly we have a few customers who think it is too.
Well, look, thanks, James, for coming on and talking a little bit about it and giving us some insights into what Content Snare is and how it can solve some big pain points as we go into this Making Tax Digital for income tax window.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode. It's myself, Indi Tatler, and Ryan Piercy that have brought you the latest and greatest in app news, and we've spoken to you a little bit about the upcoming awards that we're holding. But don't forget, you can also subscribe to our newsletter, which gives you some of these updates. And if you haven't already done so, take some time to join our community, see what else is going on, and if we can meet you at our upcoming awards ceremony in September, the night before Accountex, and it would be really great to put some names to faces. Thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next one.